Let me paint you a picture. It's Sunday night. You're lying in bed, scrolling through your bank account on your phone. You see that number staring back at you. Maybe it's $200, maybe it's $847, maybe it's negative, and you feel this knot in your stomach because you know that in 2 days, rent is due. Car insurance is coming up. Your credit card minimum is $180 this month. And somewhere in the back of your mind, there's this voice whispering that you're supposed to be saving money, building wealth, securing your future. But when you look at what's left after all your bills, after groceries, after gas, after just existing in this economy, saving $500 a month feels like someone telling you to fly to the moon by flapping your arms. Here's the truth. Most people live their entire lives in this exact cycle. They convince themselves that saving is something you do once you make more money, once you get that promotion, once you pay off that debt, once life calms down. But life never calms down. The goalposts just move. And 5 years from now, you're in the exact same place, except older, more tired, and even more convinced that financial security is for other people. But what if I told you that $500 a month, consistently saved over 5 years, doesn't just change your bank account? What if I told you it fundamentally rewires how you see yourself, how you make decisions, and how the world treats you? Today, we're going to walk through exactly what happens when you save $500 a month for 5 years. Not the fantasy version, the real version, the math, the psychology, the hidden benefits that nobody talks about. Let's start with the raw numbers. $500 a month for 60 months. If you just put this money in a regular savings account, literally doing nothing with it except letting it sit there, you end up with $30,000. Simple math. 12 times 500 is 6,000 a year. 6,000 times 5 is 30,000. Now, I know what you're thinking. $30,000? That's not life-changing money. And you're right. But here's what most people don't realize. $30,000 in actual liquid cash is more than 76% of Americans have in their savings account right now. According to the Federal Reserve's latest survey of consumer finances, the median savings account balance in this country is about $5,000. That means half of all Americans have less than that. So already, just by doing this one simple thing, you're in the top quarter of savers in the entire country. But let's keep going, because it gets more interesting. What if instead of just letting that money sit in a savings account earning basically nothing, you put it somewhere that gives you a conservative return? Let's say a high-yield savings account or a conservative bond fund that averages 5% annually. At 5% annual return, your $500 a month doesn't become $30,000. It becomes $34,119. You just made an extra $4,000 by doing literally nothing except choosing a different place to park your money. Now, let's go one step further. What if you actually invested this money in a diversified stock market index fund? The kind of thing that tracks the S&P 500. Historically, over long periods, these have averaged around 8 to 10% annually. Let's be conservative and use 8%. At 8% annual return, your $500 a month for 5 years becomes $36,687. You contributed $30,000, but you earned an additional $6,687 just from market returns. That's more than an entire year of your contributions appearing as free money because you let compound interest do its job. Look, I want you to really sit with these numbers for a second because this is where the psychology starts to shift. You didn't get a second job. You didn't win the lottery. You just made one decision, automated it, and let time do the heavy lifting. Here's where it gets really interesting. Let me break down what happens year by year because the progression is not linear. It's exponential. Year 1. You save $500 a month. At the end of year 1, with an 8% return, you have about $6,300. It doesn't feel like much. You're putting in $6,000, getting back $300 in returns. It almost feels pointless. Year 2. You've now saved $12,000 total. Your balance is around $12,950. You earned about $950 in returns this year. Still feels slow. Year 3. $18,000 contributed. Your balance is now about $20,200. You earned $2,200 in returns this year. Now, it's starting to feel real. Year 4. $24,000 contributed. Your balance is around $27,900. You earned $3,900 in returns. Your money is now making almost as much as you're contributing. Year 5. $30,000 contributed. Final balance, $36,687. In that final year alone, your returns were probably close to $3,000. This is the part nobody tells you. The beginning feels impossibly slow, but by year 4 and 5, your money is working harder than you are. And if you keep going beyond 5 years, this acceleration becomes almost absurd. By year 10, you'd have over $73,000. By year 15, over $139,000. The same $500 a month, but exponential results. Now you might be thinking, okay, the math is nice, but what does $36,000 actually get me? Let me explain. $36,000 in liquid savings is a fully funded emergency fund for most households. Financial advisors typically recommend 3 to 6 months of expenses saved. If your monthly expenses are $5,000, you now have over 7 months of runway. You could lose your job tomorrow and not panic. Your car could break down. Your roof could leak. And you'd handle it without going into debt. That is not a small thing. That is the difference between living in constant low-level anxiety and sleeping peacefully at night. $36,000 is also a 20% down payment on a $180,000 home in many parts of the country. It's the difference between being a renter forever and being a homeowner. $36,000 is a reliable used car paid in cash. No loan, no interest, no monthly payment. $36,000 is also the seed money for a small business. It's the startup capital for a side hustle that could replace your income. It's the cushion that lets you take a risk you've been too scared to take. But here's what most people miss. The real transformation isn't the money. The real transformation is what happens to you as a person when you consistently do this for 5 years. Something changes in your brain when you save money consistently. There's actual neuroscience behind this. Every time you choose to save instead of spend, you're rewiring your dopamine pathways. You're training your brain to find satisfaction in delayed gratification instead of instant gratification. And this is hard at first because our brains are literally wired for immediate reward. But after a few months of saving, something shifts. You start to feel pride when you see that balance grow. You start to feel powerful. You start to identify as someone who has their financial life together. And this identity shift is everything. Because once you see yourself as a saver, as an investor, as someone who makes smart long-term decisions, You start making other smart long-term decisions. You stop buying stupid stuff on impulse. You start negotiating your salary more aggressively. You start avoiding lifestyle inflation when you get a raise. You start thinking 5 years ahead instead of 5 days ahead. When you have no savings, when you're already in debt, there's this feeling of, well, I'm already broke. What's another $100 on the credit card? But when you're actively saving, when you're watching that balance grow, the psychology flips. Now every spending decision is measured against your goal. You've built momentum, and momentum is one of the most powerful forces in personal finance. Now look, I know some of you are sitting there thinking, this all sounds great, but I can't afford to save $500 a month. And I hear you. But here's what I want you to consider. First, it doesn't have to be 500. The principles we're talking about work with 250. They work with 100. They even work with $50 a month. The amount matters less than the consistency and the duration. If you can only save $200 a month, do that for 5 years. You'll end up with $14,675 at 8% returns. That's still life-changing for most people. Second, most people who think they can't afford to save haven't actually looked at where their money goes. The average American spends over $300 a month on subscription services they barely use. The average American spends $250 a month eating out. The average American spends $150 a month on impulse, purchases they forget about within a week. If you track your spending for 30 days, actually track it, you will find money you didn't know you were wasting. Third, earning more is always an option. $500 a month is about $125 a week. That's one freelance gig. That's one shift, driving for a rideshare app. That's selling stuff you don't need. It's asking for a raise at work and getting a $5,000 annual bump. Some of you are thinking, what about inflation? And yes, inflation is real. If inflation averages 3% a year, your $36,000 in 5 years will have the purchasing power of about $31,000 in today's dollars. But here's the thing. If you don't save, you'll have $0 in 5 years. $0 adjusted for inflation is still $0. And if you invest wisely and earn 8% while inflation is 3%, your real return is 5%. You're still ahead. Others are worried about market risk. What if the market crashes? And look, market volatility is real. But we're not talking about 1 year. We're talking about 5 years. Historically, over any 5-year period, the stock market has been positive about 88% of the time. Those are good odds. The other objection I hear is, 5 years is too long. And I get it. But here's the reality. 5 years is going to pass whether you save or not. You're going to wake up 5 years from now, no matter what. The only question is whether you wake up with $36,000 or with nothing. Let me tell you about some hidden benefits that most people never talk about. First, liquidity equals opportunity. When you have cash saved, you can take advantage of opportunities that broke people can't. A friend wants to start a business and needs a partner. You can say yes. An incredible deal on a rental property pops up. You can act. Money sitting in your account is not just security. It's options. It's freedom. Second, having savings gives you negotiation leverage. When you're living paycheck to paycheck, you can't afford to lose your job. So when your boss lowballs you on a raise, you take it. But when you have a year's worth of expenses saved, you can walk away. You can say no. You can demand what you're worth, Because you're not negotiating from a place of fear. And ironically, this confidence often leads to higher income. Third, financial stress literally costs you money. Studies show that people under financial stress perform worse at work, get sick more often, make worse decisions, and have shorter lifespans. When you're constantly worried about money, your cortisol levels are elevated. Your sleep suffers, your focus suffers. But when you have savings, that background anxiety disappears. You sleep better. You think clearer. You show up better at work. Fourth, saving money makes you better at making money. Once you understand compound interest, once you see your investments grow, you start thinking like an investor. You start seeing opportunities everywhere. This mental shift alone is worth more than the money you save. So how do you actually do this? First, automate everything. Do not rely on willpower. Set up an automatic transfer from your checking account to your savings or investment account on the day after you get paid. Treat it like a bill. You don't think about whether you feel like paying rent this month. You just pay it. Savings needs to be the same. Second, separate your accounts. Do not keep your savings in the same account as you're spending money. Open a high-yield savings account at a different bank. Open a brokerage account for your investments. Make it just slightly inconvenient to access. Third, start with whatever you can actually commit to. If 500 feels impossible, start with 200. The habit is more important than the amount at first. You can always increase it later. Fourth, invest in low-cost index funds. Don't try to pick stocks. Don't try to time the market. Just put your money in a total stock market index fund or an S&P 500 index fund with the lowest expense ratio you can find. Vanguard, Fidelity, Schwab. All offer these. Set it and forget it. Fifth, track your progress. Put your balance in a spreadsheet. Check it once a month. Watch it grow. Seeing that number climb is addictive in the best possible way. Sixth, protect yourself from yourself. Don't give yourself easy access to this money. An emergency is a medical crisis, a job loss, a true unexpected disaster. An emergency is not a vacation, a new phone, or a concert ticket. Here's what I want you to understand. The person you are 5 years from now is going to exist whether you like it or not. Time doesn't stop. 5 years from now, you'll be 5 years older. You'll have 5 more years of work behind you. 5 more years of bills paid. The only question is, will you also have $36,000? Will you have the peace of mind that comes with financial security? Will you have the options that come with liquidity? Or will you be exactly where you are right now, 5 years older, still telling yourself that you'll start saving once things calm down, once you make more money, once life gets easier? Because here's the hard truth. If you don't start now, you won't start later. There's always going to be a reason to wait. But urgency is the enemy of wealth. Immediate gratification is the enemy of long-term security. The people who win financially aren't smarter than you. They're not luckier than you. They just made a decision at some point to prioritize future them over current them. And they stuck with it long enough for compound interest to do its thing. So here's what I want you to do. Open a savings account this week. Set up an automatic transfer of whatever amount feels challenging but doable, and commit to not touching it for 5 years. That's it. That's the whole plan. Come back to this video in 60 months and tell me what happened. Tell me how much you have saved. Tell me how it changed the way you see money. Tell me how it changed the way you see yourself. Because $500 a month for 5 years isn't really about the money. It's about becoming the kind of person who does hard things consistently. It's about proving to yourself that you have discipline. that you have vision, that you're capable of delayed gratification in a world that worships instant everything. And that person, the one who can save consistently for 5 years, that person can do anything. That person can build wealth. That person can take risks. That person can create the life they actually want instead of the life they settled for. 5 years is going to pass either way. Make them count.